Dodge's Little Red Express that defied the EPA and got away with it. You ever see a car company pull something so outrageous it feels illegal? Like they found a loophole, exploited it, and somehow got away clean. Well, Dodge did exactly that in the late 70s. And here's the twist. It wasn't a muscle car. It wasn't a sports coupe. It was a pickup truck. A bright red chrome-stacked loud-mouthed beast that would become the fastest American production vehicle of 1978. This is the story of how Dodge's engineers fooled the government, mocked the EPA, and built a truck so wild that even Washington didn't know whether to ban it or salute it. If you love uncovering the wildest stories in American car history, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and let's fire this one up. The mid-70s, when power died and rules took over. By the mid-70s, Detroit was dying not from lack of talent, but from strangulation. Overnight, the government had become the new mechanic under the hood of every car in America. The EPA's Clean Air Act, born from good intentions, had turned into a choke chain for horsepower. Every cylinder had to be justified. Every spark had to be approved. To car lovers, it felt like betrayal. The oil embargo of 1973 had already crippled the market, but what came next was worse, a slow suffocation. The Camaro Z28 was neutered down to 185 horsepower. The Mustang II barely made 140. And even the Corvette, America's so-called sports car, gasped at a pitiful 220 horses by 1978. And while the politicians smiled for the cameras inside Detroit's factories, morale was collapsing. Engineers whispered about lost engines and banned camshafts like forbidden weapons. Some said the government wasn't saving the planet, it was killing an art form. Then, buried in a 1,000-page government document, a Chrysler engineer noticed something the bureaucrats missed. A single line that changed everything. G-Light trucks exceeding 6,000 pounds, GVWR, are exempt from passenger car emission standards. To Washington, it was legal noise. To Dodge, it was a weapon. A way to bring the roar back right under the government's nose. The loophole that built a legend. Tom Hoover, the same mad genius who birthed the 426 Hemi, didn't see a loophole. He saw a declaration of war. Under the fluorescent lights of Dodge's engineering lab, a small team of rebellious gearheads began whispering about something the executives would never approve, Project Lil Red. On paper, it was simple. In reality, it was treason. Take an ordinary half-ton D-150 Adventurer Utiline bolt in a police interceptor heart and bypass the EPA's entire certification process. They were about to build a muscle car the government couldn't touch. Under the hood went the E58 360 cubic inch V8, an engine normally reserved for state trooper interceptors. Then came the forbidden upgrades, a Carter Thermoquad 850 CFM carburetor for deeper lungs camshaft and valve springs from the 340 Performance small block red stripe, damped springs for higher RPMs, and a dual snorkel cold air intake, breathing through true dual exhausts that screamed skyward from twin chrome stacks. No catalytic converters, no smog pumps, no leash. The numbers told the story: 225 horsepower, 340 pound-feet of torque, more than a Corvette L8. 2 at 220 horsepower, more than a Trans Am. 400 at 200 horsepower, and leagues above a Camaro Z. 28 at 185 horsepower. Paired with the torque flight, 727 automatic, a 9 1/4 inch sure grip axle, and 3.55 to 1 gears. This wasn't a pickup. It was a coded message to Washington wrapped in red paint and chrome. A legal time bomb ticking loudly in every engineer's heart, waiting to detonate on Main Street, USA. Specs look nice on paper, but the quarter mile doesn't lie. The Red Rebel hits the streets. When the first Lil Red Express rolled out of the Dodge plant, the engineers held their breath. On the surface, it looked like a toy, a short bed pickup with chrome stacks and decals loud enough to wake the neighbors. But when car and driver got one for testing, laughter turned into silence. The stopwatch said it all: 0 to 60 in 7.8 seconds, quarter mile in 15.4, and the title no one expected: the fastest American production vehicle from 0 to 100 miles per hour in 1978. On paper, it was a truck. In reality, It was a middle finger on wheels. With a 115-inch wheelbase and curb weight just over 3,800 pounds, it was lighter than a Ford F-150 and nearly 400 pounds leaner than a Chevy C10. The 54-46 weight distribution gave it traction unheard of for a pickup. The 9 1/4-inch sure grip axle bit down under torque, and the leaf spring suspension, old crude, brutally honest, launched it forward without hesitation. Where a Corvette's independent rear danced under pressure, the Dodge simply dug in and went. The torque flight 727 slammed gears like a war drum, hydraulic metallic violent, and the sound those twin chrome stacks weren't for show. They funneled pure defiance straight into the sky. Every small-town drag strip, every Friday night stoplight became a battleground. The Lil Red Express wasn't just fast, it was living proof that Detroit still had rebellion in its bloodstream. The government fights back. The roar didn't go unheard. By 1979, the Dodge Lil Red Express had made too much noise literally and politically. Rumors began swirling through Detroit's corridors that Washington had taken notice. A handful of EPA officials were furious. The fastest vehicle in America wasn't a Corvette or a Pontiac Trans Am, it was a pickup truck built by a company they thought was broken. Suddenly audits appeared, phone calls were made. The very loophole Dodge had used was quietly rewritten. Light-duty pickups would now fall under the same emission rules as cars. The government wasn't amused, it was taking revenge. To meet the new standards, Dodge was forced to strangle its creation. The 1979 Lil Red Express came fitted with a catalytic converter, retarded ignition timing, and a milder cam profile. The once feral 360 cubic inch V8 dropped from 225 horsepower to around 180. The stacks still gleamed, but the sound, that glorious bark, was dulled to a growl. And just as Washington was clamping down, the 1979 oil crisis hit. Gas prices doubled, buyers panicked, and dealership lots filled with unsold trucks. Chrome faded under dust. The red paint still glowed, but its heartbeat was gone. In less than 2 years, Dodge had gone from defying the system to being crushed by it. The Lil Red Express wasn't outlawed by law, it was buried under silence, bureaucracy, and rising fuel prices. Legacy of a loophole. When the factory lights dimmed and the last Lil Red Express rolled off the line, Dodge didn't mourn. They'd already made their statement. That loophole became Detroit's last act of rebellion, a red bullet fired in broad daylight. In just 2 years, they'd proved that defiance could still be engineered. The Lil Red Express became a legend whispered about in garages and drag strips the day a pickup truck embarrassed every sports car in America. But legends don't die, they evolve. The spirit of that loophole truck lived on through the decades. In 1991, GMC built the Cyclone, a turbocharged all-wheel drive rocket that could outrun Ferraris. Then came the Ford SVT Lightning, a muscle truck born from pure rebellion. And finally, Dodge returned with the Ram SRT-10, a pickup powered by a Viper V10, a direct descendant of the audacity that started in 1978. Collectors now hunt for the originals, especially the pre-Catalyst 78 models, the loudest, rawest, most untamed versions ever built. Prices soar past $50,000, but what people buy isn't horsepower, it's attitude. Because the Lil Red Express wasn't just metal and gas. It was proof that rules can't kill passion, that red paint can hide revolution, and that somewhere in Detroit, an engineer is always looking for the next loophole. The Dodge Lil Red Express wasn't just a truck, it was a loophole on wheels, a last roar before the silence. Built in defiance, remembered in legend. What do you think? Would you have driven one back in '78? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe.